Okay, so today I'm going to show you a self-taught way to cut a watermelon. I think first we'll just talk a little bit about how to pick a watermelon in the grocery store. One thing that I've heard you should look for is some type of yellowing on the side of the watermelon, at the bottom or on the side. That will show us that it was ripened in its patch as opposed to picked prematurely and ripens in the grocery store. The other thing you can do is give it a little push on each end. If there's no give there, that's a good thing. Feels pretty good. And I've also had people say that you could kind of tap on it and it sort of has a hollow sound to it. So we're hoping this one's good, but you never really know until you get inside. When it comes to cutting a watermelon, there's usually a couple of things people are after. They're either looking to do chunks of watermelon or slices, and this concept works for both. So when you're dealing with watermelon and you're looking at it, I want you to constantly be thinking of halves. So the first thing to do is cut it in half. Okay, so a nice sharp knife is very helpful. All right, not too bad. So this is a seedless watermelon. So then what you do is you take the cut side and put it flat down on your cutting board. And then we're going to think halves again. Perfect. Okay. Halves one more time. So from here you have a couple of options. You can cut it this way to make your slices for people. Okay. Or you just go across with a shorter knife and then there's your squares. And there you have it. And there you have it.
Okay, now we're talking about lemons. Two great things on the lemon. One is the zest, and then in the inside, it's the juice. Always remember, if you need both of them for your recipe, zest first, juice later. It's very difficult to zest a juice lemon. So two different ways to zest. If you have a fancy zester, that's fantastic. You just back and forth, and you're good to go. I don't have a fancy zester. So again, my favorite kitchen utensil, the small cheese grater side. And then all you're doing is you're just running it all over the lemon. Now what you don't want when you're zesting is the white parts. So I'll show you. This lemon has very thick yellow parts, so that is good. And we'll get a lot of zest. But once you grate past that part there, that's going to get bitter. So that is the end of the zesting that you'll do in that spot. So just turn it to another spot and then you can continue zesting. So we don't want to zest that white away, just the yellow. All right. And then we want to juice it. So again, if you've been in our class here, we've talked often about juicing. So you always cut the lemon in half this way. If you cut it the other way, it won't work very well just because the juice sacs are aligned properly in this direction. So number one, always take out those seeds because we don't want to bite into some seeds when we're making some salad dressing. You can also do it at the end. It's easier to grab the ones in the beginning. So 2 steps to juicing a lemon. You get a fork and you get a bowl. That's as easy as you're going to do. And then just put your fork through the lemon all the way around, and you can see, I'm not even squeezing, not doing anything, not twisting the fork. The juice is starting to come out already. So the goal is to burst all of those juice sacs inside that lemon. So go around a couple of times inside of the lemon, the outside of the lemon, turn your fork all around. So now the second part is just getting the rest of it out. So the easiest thing to do is to put your fork not directly on that radius, but on a bit of an angle like that, in between those segments, and then twist your fork. And then as you're going around, and because the lemon gets slippery, you'll want to squeeze that lemon as well around that twisted fork. And you'll find that this is one of the easiest ways to juice a lemon. I suppose you could use a juicer, but that just takes up a lot of space in your kitchen cupboards. So you just go through and then just squeeze all that juice out of that lemon. And the pulp also has a lot of flavor. And so just scrape that pulp that's popping out of the lemon into the bowl that you're going to use for your juice. Squeeze it till you can squeeze no more. And even people with arthritis often are able to do this because you don't have to squeeze a ton to get a lot of that juice out because the fork does that work for you. So there you go. The lemon's pretty dry, the juice is in the bowl. You just got to take out those seeds, and then you've got freshly squeezed lemon. All right, let's chat garlic. So garlic is something I find in the summer that dehydrates really quickly. So when you have that full bulb or you have just one of those pieces, the clove, and the skin is on it, if you squeeze that skin and there's space between the skin and the meat of the garlic, then you know it's shriveled up like an apple core. So we just won't enjoy the flavor of that. It'll be too dry. It won't have that intense garlicky flavor. So what do? We can't run out to the grocery store every time we need garlic sometimes. So what I like to encourage people to do is to get that full garlic bulb. And again, know where your garlic comes from. Chinese garlic doesn't have the same great flavor as Canadian garlic. So try to make sure that when you're purchasing garlic, buy that Canadian garlic. So get that big bulb, break it all apart, take all the skin off of it, and store each little clove in the freezer in a little Ziploc bag. And you can label it, then you'll know to use it up in the next 3 or 4 months. But then, especially frozen, so easy to cut. And you know, my favorite way to do garlic is on the cheese grater. If you waited till it was totally soft and thawed out, it's going to be kind of slippery because, of course, it gets a little bit more limp, everything we take out of the freezer. So the best thing to do is to grate it when it's frozen. Very easy. If you don't have a cheese grater, then you just want to get a sharp knife. Sharp is always easiest. And you just want to cut it in slices. And once you're done one direction, or it's too small to hold up straight, flip it on that flat side. The flat side is always the easiest way to cut it. And cut it into as thin slices as you can, because biting into a great big bulb of garlic in a salad or in a dish isn't as tasty as you would think. So there you go. You store your garlic in the freezer in a little Ziploc bag and then just pull it out as you need it. Cheese grating it on the small cheese side, not the large one. The small cheese grater side, or with a knife. There you go. You have your garlic all shredded to tiny little pieces, and you can enjoy it all year round. Okay, let's chat how to roast nuts. I'm not sure if you've ever tasted roasted nuts before, but they are delicious. The best nut to purchase is an unsalted, unroasted, because it's raw. As soon as you put heat to something that's higher in fat like nuts, then that heat might start to break down that oil quality. And then depending on how long they sit somewhere, that oil might not be good when you go to put in your mouth. And they might not taste good. So the way to freshen your nuts is to roast them yourself. So there's 2 different ways to roast nuts. One is in the oven and one is on the stovetop. So you can actually just do it in a frying pan. You might need to add a little bit of oil in the beginning. There's oil in here, but until it gets heated, it won't come out. So add a little bit of oil, maybe a teaspoon for a full, half of a cup of nuts, and then just stir. And as they start to brown, you'll start to smell it. And when you start to smell it, they are done. So in the oven is a little bit of a different story just because you're not right there looking at it and checking it. Nuts will turn brown very quickly, so you have to be careful. So as soon as you put the nuts in the oven, set your timer for every 1 minute or 2 minutes maybe in the beginning. As you get into, I don't know, these might take 4 or 5 minutes once the oven is hot. A larger, like an almond, might take up to 15 minutes. But when they get close to being roasted, they're going to turn really quickly, and we don't want to lose that whole pan. I have lost a whole pan of nuts or seeds before when you're roasting them. So don't get busy starting a load of laundry or vacuuming the front entrance or something like that. Pay attention to your nuts. So you set the timer for 2 minutes and then take a peek. Set it for another 2 minutes and take a peek. So these ones will probably take 5-ish minutes, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep setting that timer to make sure that they're not going to brown. So if you leave the room, a really good indicator is when you walk back in, getting that timer, can you smell the nutty smell? And if you can, then they're really getting close. You can roast any kind of nut, any kind of seed, coconut, same as well. And when you roast them, it freshens them up. It tastes so much better. You're going to get a more intense flavor. That's why we like to roast nuts, to put them in the salads, because you don't need a whole lot. You just need a little bit, and they're going to have a very great, strong flavor. The other great thing is that you can roast a whole bunch of nuts and then keep them in your freezer, and then just take out a little bit at a time and put them on the salad bowl as you're eating them. You don't want to roast nuts and then add them to a salad, let it sit for an hour and then serve it. They're just going to go soggy. And what's a soggy nut? That's not very tasty. So you just want to add it to your own bowl, or right to the large bowl of salad right before you're going to serve it. So we're going to put this in. The one thing I haven't mentioned yet is temperature. So we're going to put this in the oven at 350 degrees. You can do a higher temperature, but then you're really at risk of burning the top and not really roasting the bottom of the nut. 350 degrees, I'm going to set it for about 5 or 6 minutes, checking it every 2. And here you have roasted nuts.
So we're going to use quinoa in our recipe today, and it's a favorite of mine. Quinoa has all of the amino acids, so it's a complete protein. It's high in fiber, and it's also really good for diabetics. You cook it just the same as rice. It's a 2-to-1 concept, and when it's complete, it comes out in these tiny little grain-like things. So what I like to do is cook a couple cups of quinoa every weekend, and then I freeze it in portions so that I could add it to all kinds of different things. So we're going to use it today in a salad, but I've used it in soups and stews. You can eat it on its own. It's not as tasty on its own. It definitely works much better in a recipe. So I hope that you're able to give quinoa a try. It's definitely worth it.